evening to the 75th session of Art Matters. Some of you may wonder how long we have been carrying this very interesting series of conversations, talks, discussions, etc. A particular welcome to all of you because this is after many years, 2 years or more, that we are able to organize a live event. And I'm sure you're all well protected and that you shall go back richly endowed with some ideas. We have this evening a dear old friend. He produced a film for me, you believe it or not, Khayal Gatha, which was born out of a conversation which happened by sheer accident as I ran into Kumar on the staircase of Jahangir Art Gallery. And we happened to be talking, and he started talking about how the rigidities of Drupad provoked the freedom of khayal to emerge. I thought this was a very fascinating theme. So finally, well, to cut the long story short, I am at least producer of one of his films. And we have also been instrumental in publishing a selection of his essays in English, which was done a few years ago. But Kumar Shahani, besides being a filmmaker, is deeply interested in Hindustani classical music. He, in fact, has been a performer, a reluctant one, and had learned in the Guru Shishya Parampara. His knowledge is deep. He's also deeply interested in literature and ideas. I have no idea what he's going to talk about, so I cannot possibly tell you in advance what he's going to say. But he's one of those very few thinking minds who also can, in a manner of speaking, resonate the cosmos and the issues that are in forefront in the cosmic scheme of things from the utterly ordinary. So we have Kumar Shahani, and may I request him to kindly come. If you would like to speak.
Thank you. Is this it?
No, that's working.
Yeah, well, Ashok has always been extremely generous to me, and what he said just now, obviously, is very moving, and also that he should invite me when it's the 75th. So I had worn clothes of mourning, actually, black, but now I'll have to change it all. I'm going to celebrate, along with you, the reopening of these talks. And this time, in fact, he was even more generous than the last time he had to introduce me, which was when he had invited me to inaugurate the chair. Can't you? Huh? Ah, yes. So the chair at the Institute of Advanced Studies at Nantes, and he said similarly that he doesn't know what the hell I'm going to speak about, and he's a kind of eccentric, he was protecting himself, I think, that he was going to talk to you, so forgive him his folly. That's what he said in his introduction. And after I'd finished the talk, which was, of course, full of folly, one very important academic from Europe, but of African origin, came up to me and shook my hand, and he says, "Vive la folie," you know. So that was that was quite a a moment of great warmth, which I've also received today from amongst people that I met in the corridors of India International Center and in the courtyard, the beautiful flowers that are here. Delhi is, of course, at its best, and I'm coming back to Delhi after about 6 or 7 months, and I must admit that my heart is full of nostalgia for it, even as I see it. So one doesn't know when we'll come back. Anyway, last night I met old friends Nitin and Aditi and Prabhu Khate, and I was in that state of mourning that I spoke about. Who wasn't last night, you know, because it was like the culmination of many years of mourning, in a sense. So I think it's that kind of mourning started sometime in my own life. Around 2008, I was at my daughter's place in London on Mile End Road, just opposite Mile End Tube Station, where there were, as usual, newspaper vendors and so on. And I had an appointment somewhere, so I went to the tube station around 10:30 in the morning, and the headlines in the newspaper, which they were selling there, said that 43,000 workers were retrenched from just one company. So at that time, I didn't know what to think, you know. I'd never heard of such an event before, you know. I'd never felt that everything, even in the so-called developed world, the people who had colonized us would have to face a situation as unthinkable as the one that was happening. And since then, several things have happened. And a kind of culmination was taking place in the last few days anyway, in almost about everything. What I saw on television, what is happening to friends of mine who are disappearing from this earth. You know, I lost very close colleagues, as it were, you know, who had helped me realize my work before, and who had helped me since years to kind of consummation, if you like, which the realization of a work gives you, that experience, a sort of fulfillment which nothing else can give you. And these people were, one of them was Alaknanda Samarth, who was less well known than her cousins, Nutan and Tanuja, who were from the same family, and they were daughters of Shobhana Samarth. So there was a long tradition in that family of acting. And through Alaknanda, I had tried to work on enunciation in different voices, because she was situated in London, and we did a few workshops together. And in one of the workshops, while she spoke Shakespeare the way she spoke, there were others who were from other parts of the world, like Italy, South Africa, the United States of America, London itself, and Japan even, and Iraq. We had actually a cousin of Saddam Hussein also in the workshop. And they all worked on the same texts that we chose. And the person who was leading the workshop along with Alaknanda and me was Cicely Berry, who had often come to India. She was a strong Labour Party person, very anti-racist, etc., and interested in enunciation of Shakespeare and the English language, as it were, from all over the world. And we had also gone often to the sound archive. London has an absolutely fantastic sound archive. It is as important, I think, to world art as the V&A, which is in the same museum district of London. And it is certainly very important to anybody interested in the enunciation of Shakespeare in different languages, actually. So from there onwards, it became very evident that, poetry and drama and acting has to depend on a certain kind of base of tonality, rather than grammar, So it is a play of tonalities which creates speech, not the other way around. And I had had discussions even with Ashok once or twice about this issue, sometimes just very casually walking up some staircase or sitting down on the steps of Jahangir Art Gallery, that what is this thing, for instance, that makes the Urdu-speaking people of the subcontinent here, as well as in Pakistan or wherever else Urdu is spoken, give it such an elegant feel, and how it resonates with truth when it is not spoken pretentiously. Meaning when it is spoken casually and with that kind of ease, not to project power which comes from the court or from given set of etiquette, but from that inner resource that it has. And it's a mystery why it is so. And of course, Ashok speculated upon it then, and probably he's right. It's because most of us are so burdened by the noise around us that we forget our own base of tonality, the tonal variations that are possible, are denied to us. Another person who has given some insights into this is Mukund Lat. Mukund Lat is a musicologist or theoretician of music based in, is he alive?
Jaipur.
He's no more there.
No, he died.
Achha. So he was in Jaipur. And one of his most interesting observations was that it is the residual syllable, as it were, not the Samaved itself, which governs our tonal imagination, and which means that the syllables which are not necessarily meaningful, directly meaningful, but which nevertheless have the alankara, which could make those syllables more meaningful, those other syllables which are meaningful, more meaningful. I think that would be a right way of putting it across. So now I think that I will go to something which is very, in a sense, prone to be misunderstood. Like yesterday, Aditi made a very interesting comment. She said, not that you were always considered not spiritual, but have you shifted to spiritualism or something, and that she had asked Nitin. And I'm glad that she asked that question, although it hurt a bit, because Nitin, of course, knows me for a very long time, and he never thought that I was either unspiritual or spiritual. He knows me enough to know that the binary doesn't apply. So anyway, I have been asked that question before. And I wondered when I was giving Udayan the title for this talk, whether that misunderstanding would happen, that I've suddenly decided to become sort of religiously spiritual. I assure you I have not, There is no religiosity. But of course, like everything else, many of the things that one talks about, like what even Mukund Lat had to say, the source is religion of sorts, or pre-religion even, because mantras are, I think, not religious, but before any religion gets formed. And that's why even in the Judeo-Christian tradition, they say in the beginning was the Word, you know. And if one goes back, it is not the printed word, it's not even the spoken word, it is the resonance which is contained within, you know. Now this very thing has faced a very, very great challenge in our times. And it's good to go back perhaps to a mode of discourse which people like Joyce adopted, which seemed just like a kind of stream of consciousness. That's the name it was given. But where an ancient kind of law of creativity perhaps applies, which is that everything should be left half done, incomplete. You know, the incompletion is itself an act of creativity, you know, leaving it incomplete. So I resisted for a while for several reasons, which will become apparent during the speech, I resisted unconsciously, if you like, the actual writing of it. And this afternoon I told myself, anyway, let me try and make some points. And instead of making some points, I fell into that trance-like mode, which Joyce used to probably practice. He wrote very often, writing, lying on his belly, you know. It was important for him. And the person, I believe, who used to write standing up sometimes when he was not typing was Didi Kosambi, you know. So you see the difference in the two kinds of writing. Most of us, of course, write with with something in front of us, and mostly in a seated position of one sort or another. So the kind of writing that it produces, your posture, itself changes the mode of writing. And I will just also leave what I've just written an hour or two ago. Without feeling too ashamed of it, you know. So if you will permit me, I'll do that for a minute. I wish, first of all, to be able to find a way of bowing to you, the audience, and I'm not able to find it. This is the way Guru Kelucharan Mahapatra told me the performance should begin, that you should bow to the audience and bow to the earth. But when I'm going to bow to the earth, I would like to request all of you to do the same, because this is the time to do that, you know. I think Nitin understands that very well, because he had conducted the Rio de Janeiro environmental thing, and then there's a war going on, somewhere nearby, and there are all these institutions that we had tried very painfully to build up, be it the Parliament or be it the Film Institute. My colleague, former student, and one of the best persons, was one of the best teachers that I've met in the world, is sitting here, teachers of cinema, who adopts the Guru Shishya Parampara tradition, as well as the tradition that we've got from universities like Oxford and Cambridge. In his teaching methods, he has had to leave the Film Institute for absolutely whimsical reasons of those that would rather destroy these institutions than keep them alive. So anyway, that is why we should bow to this earth. Like Guru Kelucharan Mahapatra told me, the reason why we bow to this earth is because we are stamping on it, Unfortunately, we don't realize it, but we are doing it all the time. Not only stamping on it, but throwing bombs and killing people, etc. So if we bow to the earth, this won't be just as artists or intellectuals or so on. It is that we are participants in this horror. That's why I'm mourning. The world has also given itself up so thoroughly to technology that it doesn't, first of all, know what that technology is doing itself. Secondly, it's as if technology is going to take care of all that of putting back all that we undo. Technology is great. I have a pacemaker, and without the technology I'm speaking of, I would not be alive. But the way it is paralyzing thought and action is extraordinarily dangerous. So, while remembering Sayukta and Kelu Babu, who did their Mangalacharan in this way, I am, of course, unable to do that myself, but somehow within our hearts we can possibly do that and find that the flow of our humors within move towards a certain kind of moksha, as in the Odissi dance. The end portion, it is supposed to end with a kind of what they call the portion of moksha, which is a kind of denouement, or what would you call it? Kind of thing at the end, where the different kind of temperaments the humors create begin to constitute a new set of bhavas, a new unbelievable, unknown. The unknown begins to reveal itself. And it defies given classifications, and these sometimes begin to outrage the powers that be. The other day, I was reading an old copy of El Cid, the neoclassical tragedy. And it was an annotated version. It was it must be from my partner Rimli Bhattacharya's old days that that book was there. She had studied comparative literature at Brown University. And there was this wonderful little book. And in the annotations, every time I found an extremely felicitous and passionately inspiring phrase in French, which I had not heard before or after. There was, the annotation said that the Académie Française had banned this particular mode of, a figure of speech or a metaphor or mode of addressing a situation. So this is a kind of introduction, and I would now like to show you some photographs which I've taken on the street that I live now and near there. I haven't taken the photographs. I insisted that these be young people who are beginning to themselves explore photography, that they come to my place, and I told them why, etc., that I was giving this talk, and would they please come and help me photograph. So first there's a series of photographs here, then there'll be another. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Slow.
बत्ती बुझा दो.
Next. Next. Okay. So this will stay for a while because they otherwise find it difficult. But you can ignore it having seen it. So in the photographs that you saw earlier, obviously there was a text. And it's on a little board. And Einstein's mug is seen in beautifully emerging from the black, dark black ink that is there. And in the long shots, you see the muck around it. But not only that, the rendition of the light is very different. It is, you will see that it was exaggerated in the last one, for example, the color in it was exaggerated, and in one of the earlier ones, that it was extremely blue, as compared to the other long shot. It was moving towards blue. Of course, the reasons are many. One is the nature of the camera itself. There are different cameras. Then there are different persons who are doing it. So there's a slight change of, although they were exchanging thoughts, the use of the aperture is different, which also then affects the focus. And the reading of Einstein's line changes as a result, because if you really take it seriously, what Einstein is saying, then all these other factors, not just Einstein's mug and the words that are quoted from him, but that everything else there matters in the way it is rendered because of these different actions that are being done by machines. Now, I must tell you that every day virtually, every week virtually, we hear of the latest in the technologies of reproduction, or whatever you want to call it, and the promise seems to be that that we will reach a stage where the synapses that take place within our consciousness of all the sensations will then produce a different level of consciousness. But for the moment, all the time, what is being discussed is the resolution. They want to avoid any discussion about why it fails to produce the synapses and synesthesia that we are actually aspiring to, which all art necessarily has to, and which all art otherwise it's of no use really. You can, as you can see, anyone who is satisfied with the robotic behavior of equipment, or tries to find rationale for resolution, being what it is, whatever it is at the moment, given technology, will naturally not aspire to that further, what would you call it, realization, And of all the titles given to film directors, the one that I have been very happy with is the one that Aruna's teacher, or you had worked with René, you had, no? You had worked with Alain René?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Alain René uses that, réalisateur. He doesn't say metteur en scène, And I don't remember many others who use that word, So I think it's very true that the idea of making a film is to make real, to render that and to resolve it in such a way that there's a realization, of perhaps not just the imagination of one person, the director himself, but a realization. He usually worked with the most avant-garde writers of France, Marguerite Duras and Alain Robbe-Grillet. These were people who were doing great things in literature. And he also worked with the, the non-linear narrative which came from other countries, you know. So he would make it a kind of jumble, a kind of stream of consciousness, if you like. And most of you will recall Hiroshima, Mon Amour, you know, and realize that how much of that film has then influenced not only literature but and cinema, but also to a large extent of how we bridge the everyday with the mythological event, which becomes like, you know, the bombing of Hiroshima. And of course, all of you being very learned people, I know that you know that it was a kind of gratuitous bombing which was done. The war was won, and they chose Hiroshima as a target because of other reasons. And the main reason was that they could observe, as they said, they observed the effects of the bomb and film it. There are films of that also available still at the Hiroshima Museum itself, but also you can get them here. One of them is made by a very good filmmaker called Susumu Hani. So you can also get it. So the observation of that disastrous bombing was the core reason why Hiroshima and Nagasaki were chosen for that. It was not only photographic observation and memory through photography, but also all the material there has been preserved as much as they could find, which lasted it, with the effects of the bombing evident in whatever signs that are left of the decay of the human body, etc. And the picture that, for instance, a seated person had made at that time on the stone, you know. Now we can move to the rest of the photographs. This time it's turned blue because the evening light, from becoming warm, started fading, and it becomes cooler. So the color temperature changes. It was not because of the camera, it was not also because of the aperture, it was not because of the desire of the photographers, but it happened because the light changed sufficiently. So the moment, every moment offers a different set of alternatives when whenever one is shooting, and one chooses that moment, you know, especially if one is a low-budget filmmaker. You know, one can't keep on taking shots one after the other. But one has to be able to predict to some extent what result you would get at that particular point. So it's the same object that you saw lying over there, but it is so really. I told both the young people that now stop thinking of it as an object. You think of it as what you imagine its life to be, and you explore all the infinite possibilities which the light then gives you at that time. And that's what they came up with. And now I will talk to you a little bit about another person who helped me realize some of the things that possibly millions of people feel deep down. Nobody could excel her, as far as I know. This person, of course, who we have lost very recently, we have all lost, is Lata Mangeshkar. She was just incredible. And, you know, I had to put a certain thing across in a film that I made called Tarang. I don't know how many of you have seen it, but without saying it, purely through Vyanjana, if you like, to be able to speak of that relationship of the everyday with something that you do not know, you know, with the unknown. And I went on listening to different enunciations. I knew it would come through music. At the back of my mind was, you know, different renditions of Vaishnava Janatu, you know, Mahatma Gandhi's favorite verses. And those verses were sung slightly differently by that whole area which lies around Sindh, Rajasthan, and so eastwards, you know, to Gujarat, Maharashtra, southwards. And every time, of course, it was slightly different. It was possibly very often also slightly out of tune, if you like, you know. And I wanted a kind of shades of it. I didn't want it to be stated as that. So while trying to get those resonances or the undertones of it, you know, I heard a lot of people singing ragas, and I thought I'd stumble upon a solution. And indeed, that is the way one went about it. The first thing that came very close to it was that Mand, this, you know, the rag, and which of course most of us know in the version that is very beautifully sung by almost even the touristy kind of people in Rajasthan when they welcome you to that part of India.
Padharo Mare Desh.
Padharo Marathesh. So, and then there are many renderings of it. I think Shobha Guttu has done one very nice rendering. And then I heard other people there sing it, but I wasn't quite happy. And in the meantime, concurrently, I was talking to Raghuveer Sahai, because he was the most interested, along with Kamlesh, in the work I had already done. Kamlesh and he were very, very interested in that work. And so I invited Raghuveer Sahai to Bombay and asked him, will he stay a couple of days with us, and he could talk about Vaishnav poetry as such. And we had this kind of thing, exchange, on the basis of which he wrote the words of the song. In the exchange, one of the things I remember, I requested him that he used the sibilants, in Vaishnav, as they are used in Vaishnav poetry across India. The sibilants are somehow, they come very sharp normally when they are recorded. But the effect of the sibilants in the Vaishnav poetry that we know right across India, from Rajasthan right up to the Gaudiya, Vaishnavism of Chaitanya and so on, they are softened for some reason. They are not as sharp. So he tried to incorporate that, and I was very happy. Also, he was very free, that he did not try to square it off. It's got a kind of freedom, which he knew he would thereby leave for the composer and the performer that space to fill up, and that's very important, I think, in songwriting, that both the composer and the singer, and finally, of course, the director, because it has also to be visualized, fill up that space which is left open, and increase that openness further. That is, nothing gets so fixed that its interpretation is only one. It has to have a multivalence of sorts. And so, from that song evolved. I was wondering whether I should play it at all, but I came to the conclusion that would also be a closure. And I should not play it, and I consulted someone who followed me on a street in Pune some time ago. He's a Pakhavachia, but also is a cybernetics person. And he had stopped me and said, please, can I talk to you? I want to know what Kosambi thought of music, So he wanted to exchange those ideas. This happened some years ago, and then we became friends, and I have asked him, he's a Pakhavachia, but the song is written after all those consultations with many musicians and hearing the music. And the musicians I consulted included Arolkar Bua, who was the doyen of the Gwalior Gharana there in Bombay, and he sang a bandish in Mand Jogia. So that opened up a possibility of Uh, and the way he took the khatka in it, became a sort of point from which perhaps Vanraj could work further. I mean, although one doesn't work like that, but now I've asked Amol Ghode, who is that Pakhavich player, to sort of deconstruct or whatever the writing of in notations by Vanraj, and sent him also a recording which I recently received. All this happened because when Lataji first sang, her opening song in Hindi, Partho has been kind enough to give that information to me. The lyrics are by Nazim Panipati. दिल मेरा तोड़ा मुझे कहीं ना कहीं कहीं का न छोड़ा तेरे प्यार ने. That was the first song in Hindi, apparently, in Hindi films. Majboor is the name of the film, and it was music director's master Ghulam Haider. So if you can remember that song, you will understand her evolution better. There's a lot about that evolution on YouTube now, because it is from this little Kolhapuri girl, very young, with a thin voice, as Partha was telling me this afternoon. That thin voice was rejected by the really archaic but very popular filmmaker S. Mukherjee. She was rejected on that count. And Ghulam Haider apparently told S. Mukherjee that it is such a voice that people will get so addicted to it that nobody else would be able to sing after that, And indeed, the reputation that she developed was that she doesn't let other people sing. That she's very, very cruel to any aspiring singer. And when I was finally happy with, because Vanraj used to fight with me all the time, as he probably did with others as well, and say, I won't do what you want to do, So I'd play things to him and tell him, but don't you see that this is what I want, And finally, then, like for this song, he had phoned me at 11 at night and said, I'm a Randi. So I said, what do you mean, He said, I'm doing exactly what you want, and it doesn't quite suit me, So I said, well, are you sure that you are not happy with it? Then if you're not happy, why are you calling me? Because I'd like to know what you have done. And we won't go and record anything or even choose the singer till we know. So then 11 o'clock at night, he was quite drunk. He said, then you and Roshan, my wife, come over. Look, I know you won't like it. He started more or less crying, Anyway, we went there. And then I said, Vanraj, what is happening? Why are you so disturbed, So he said, no, you see, you want Man Jogia, and my first phrase is in Bimbalas. Now what can I do? So I said, okay, it's not that I wanted the closure. I didn't want to close your, options. And it may be something else altogether. Anyway, there's such a great problem adapting the tempered scale, which is the Western scale, and the bars, 1, 2, 3, 4, to avartana, So how do you create? It's a magical achievement to be able to get these two irreconcilable systems together to produce a film song of value. And it's not only these heroic people, musicians, etc., who were concerned about it. There have been other great musicians across the globe who want to reconcile totally different languages of music and reintegrate it into an individual gem, as it were. And it doesn't always succeed. So, and today, additionally, the challenge is even greater because nobody knows what the technology will deliver or why it is not delivering it in this way. The other day, the sound recordist who set up all the Dolby systems in India had dropped in. He was my student as well. And he started his career with Khayal Gatha, Vikram Joglekar. And he was just going to Venice, and he had dropped by in Pune, which is his hometown. And I asked him what is the latest that is happening. He said, we have now recording equipment which goes past the thresholds of hearing, beyond the thresholds of hearing in every way. Now, that means that, and they can, by the numerical readings, calibrated for it by the new sort of things that they have, gizmos, they know that they are able to reproduce those, but they are finding that we resist it, that the human body resists it. Something very similar had happened to me vis-a-vis color when I first shot on Kodachrome. And I was wondering, why is that the spectrum on the cooler side, especially towards blue and violet, was giving such a distortion, whereas everything else on the warmer side was giving me, something that I wanted to see. Now, what happens is that when it goes past thresholds, all our senses get a bit
Shocked.
yeah, shocked, and we begin to try to interpret that in a different way, so that the shock doesn't quite completely overwhelm us. So now, anyway, it looked like an impossible song to be realized. And everybody also told me that Lata Mangeshkar is a monster, she will never sing for you. And even Van Raj had said to me that it won't be possible. She has never sung for me, he said. So I said that may be for some other reasons. And anyway, we will go and try and ask her. And you know, at that time I didn't even have a phone at home. And of course there was no mobile. So I had to go to a public phone and
Drop a coin.
with the coin ring up Lata Mangeshkar from a public phone on the street. And I was very nervous, obviously. You know, I've heard of her, and I knew how much, not only me, but everyone else that I knew just adored her. And when the sound went click, I said, she must have heard that sound also, and she must have thought that how dare a person who can't have a phone himself call me. And anyway, far from it, she said, so where do you live, you know? So I said, I live on Sophia College Road. And she said, well, Pedder Road is not far, which is actually true. It was a minimum taxi fare, and you could, or even less, I could even walk to her place. So come over. And so I told Van Raj that, well, Lata has said we could go over to her place. And he was very nervous. He said, we can't do it. You won't be able to afford her, you know the budget of your film, etc. So, and everybody else said the same thing. Anyway, we went to her place, and I told her that, this is the text, but I don't want to tell you any more. The rest, of course, Van Raj can brief you on. And I told her the basis of the song, and that I'm making this film, and I feel that there can be nobody else who can sing this song. So she said very spontaneously, yes, I will sing it. She did not ask for how the song will move, or that is musically, And she said, you just wait I'm going to London for a few weeks, and I'll come back and we'll do the recording. So there was this other question. I told her that everyone says that you will charge a sum which I know that I cannot afford, and all that. She says to me, again very spontaneously, that I know who you are, and I know that you can't afford anything like this, so I'm not going to ask you for a penny. Don't even think about it, So I told the guy who was handling the production that you please see to it that you give her a lovely bouquet of flowers or something, because at least that we should do. And then we waited. Van Raj, that's the only time she sang for Van Raj. And Van Raj was very nervous, of course, because I think he had also never composed a song like this, with a very strict teka, and that teka had to be, worked out in such a way that it works in those bars, and that my Pakhavachia friend, Amol Ghore, has done a kind of deconstruction. So he says, the vocal tabla and probably sarangi divides each matra into 4 beats. Then the bar structure is made. The rhythm, the time signature, as they call it, is 4/4. So these repeating timelines after 12 bars then again become 1, 2, etc. The string section is divided in half, vocals and tabla. So every 2 bars of vocals, tabla, signifies single bar of strings. So you see it goes on in this manner. And he adds somewhere that what he found interesting is there's very little of means of the glissandos, and there is more of the sustenance of notes and the khatka, which is like pada pa pa, that kind of thing, sare sa sa, that kind of thing. Now that I think was from Mand actually. It wasn't the same notes, and of course. So I replied to his comments saying what a wonderful thing, because he says what Lata does is that she uses a certain way. There are, like khatka is there, meend is there. There is the vibrato, which is also called kampan. And she brings that, I thought. What a wonderful thing to use kampan, I think that this is what I have written to him, Lataji's own contribution. So the song was always played with a violin to the singer who was going to perform. And I think the violin need not have performed the kampan. It is her doing, And what it does is then the playing of the strings take on the entire, like Thakur Jayadev Singh said actually that the violin itself has its origins in India. Certainly a lot of bowed instruments existed which are like the violin and the sarangi in the Indus Valley civilization. So the violins take over that meenkari, as it were, and as a result, we also get a choral element in the song. So, Lataji was an angel, and I remember her with absolutely great fondness. So one of the causes for this mourning are also this great loss.
Which song is this?
This is a song which was written by, it is in Tarang, and I didn't want to play it because I know that I don't have the right equipment to play it, but it's all over on YouTube. So with the picturization as well. So you can get a taste of it if you want to. You can just type in this Barse Ghana Sari Raat, or the opening lines of the. So I want to express my gratitude once again to you. Thank you, Ashok, for being able to express this, because I was interviewed by some people from the media, and they about all that is happening, and some people are wanting also to interview me on Vanraj as well, which I have not done yet. And all this thing, that is the loss that one feels is not being talked about, It is in every aspect of life and in all the institutions that have been so, so important to us in realizing the tryst with destiny, and we are unable to do so because of so many diverse reasons, I do hope that there will be a mode where we will overcome the present sort of disaster. I won't spell it out.
Would you like any questions?
Go ahead.
Well, friends, if you have any questions or brief comments, you're welcome. Be brief, pointed.
Sir?
Yes, please. No, wait for the mic. Just coming to you.
Can I just clarify what I was saying, because
Just
I
a minute.
left
There's a question.
something
No.
unsaid. I think we
Please let him ask the question.
Sir, I just wanted to know from you further, because you are a filmmaker, apart from other things, basically a filmmaker, which uses as its base technology. Now, when you refer to technology and the limitations of technology, and today we are in a world which we are fast, technology is the order of the day.
Yes.
So I would like you to explain little bit now, with the, in relation to the arts, would
Yeah.
you put a limitation on technology?
No, the technology has its limits, What I'm trying to say is that right from the beginning, for instance, when film making was started, first it didn't have sound, Sound came a little later. So right from the beginning, there were two different kinds of ways of looking at that technology. One was the way that basically the Anglo-Saxon world, America and England particularly, possibly Germany as well, looked upon it as something which does a representation, So it had to be true to the object that it was representing. And also it had to be addressed not to an audience but to a consumer. More or less, that was the way technology of imaging in contemporary times developed. There. But there was another school which included India. If you think of Dadasaheb Phalke as our first filmmaker, of course there was Hiralal Sen in Bengal, who was more or less adopting the same thing of representation. But over here, and in Lahore and Bombay, there was the idea of creating even giving a reality to our mythology, of making our mythology look real, And Dadasaheb Phalke, of course, is the big example because he even cast his own child, I think, as Krishna, girl child, which violates the idea of representing further, because a girl child was playing Krishna. So it's and Méliès in France, of course, did a film called A Trip to the Moon, almost at the same time as the Lumiere brothers were photographing the train coming onto a platform, or a gardener, just with a hose, watering the plants. So since then, every time there's been a technological change, there have been problems of what will be the realization, When Lataji first arrived on the scene, people said how well she has rendered something. Few years later, Elvis Presley was on the international scene, who probably did not sing half as many songs as Lataji did, but had quite a following anyway at that time. But soon we discovered that Elvis Presley didn't know how to sing, which is not the case with Lata Mangeshkar. Elvis Presley's songs were recorded, and it was the recordist who was playing around with the rendition of those songs, which made it sound like that. A little bit of that is true later of Michael Jackson. His famous moonwalk is created by the lighting that is there, even in real, even when you see him, the lighting is being manipulated in that way, so that your eye begins to behave like the technological machine, and therefore you are able to pixelate it in a certain way, which appears a very new form of dance, Yeah.
I'll talk later, it's okay.
No, please.
No, because I've also known Kumar now for 42 years or 45 years. My question was, actually I didn't want to ask that question because I know that you are there is no duality, because everybody is, particularly people who are very sensitive, their spirit is kind of, but I was, Prabhu asked the question, what is your talk about? And then I said something that, and what I wanted to say was that you are technically a rationalist because, and the scientific temperament.
Yes. That's very important to us. Yeah.
What that means. Yeah. And does that mean that, so in which sense is this topic that has been chosen?
Yes, indeed. I hope I was able to answer that question.
Now you did, yes. That's all.
Okay. So friends, with that, we come to the end of this evening. Thank you, Kumar, for making us aware of what we have lost, and that mourning for that loss also in some way cleansing us of the grief. And thank you all for being here in spite of the difficulties. We are hoping that गुलाम शेख का हुआ क्या?
Sir, next month.
है?
Next month 21 तारीख को.
Next?
21st April.
नहीं, वो 30 तक ही है यहाँ.
तो वो फिर आर्ट मैटर्स तो नेक्स्ट मंथ जाएगा.
अच्छा, नहीं फिर क्या वो इससे पूछ लो अगर मिल जाए. Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh, the painter poet from Gujarat, has done a large book on the arts, and we have got it translated into Hindi, means published. Nirakhti Nazar. And it's a book of art history, very interestingly done. So we are hoping that maybe sometime later this month, there'll be a discussion when Ghulam Sheikh is here, along with some other people. And Sudhir Chandra is one of them. He wants Udayan to be there. He wants somebody else. Anyway, so we'll give you the details. Thank you very much for coming.